All right, so we are moving along. Well, sort of. We're not moving back into Anti-Oedipus quite yet. Those of you who haven't joined the streams in a little bit, let me go ahead and pull up because I've got a whole bunch of things that I want to make sure are running, because I know I have probably nobody yet in chat, which is fine. I'm accepting of such things for the content that I do. Short version. As we've kind of made our way through really the brunt of Anti-Oedipus, and we're finally into capitalism, making our way through codes, and the switch in capitalism from codes to axiomatics. The term axiomatics is one of those things that I haven't been happy with my understanding of it, to say it lightly. And I mean, who would be? It's we'll say it's lighter as a grasp of it than other things, really speaking. But the way that axiomatic sort of operates is really, really important to Deleuze. It's important to the book. It's important to understanding Anti-Oedipus. So we are slowly making our way basically through the brunt of what is the axiomatic, and it has been, I will say, a unique journey. And we're finally coming to what I think is probably really the brunt of what it means and why it's inside of D&G's works. So slowly, I'm going to continue to make my way through this text. Let me make sure that I can share it for our friends here in the Discord. Let's see. It could be this window. We'll do text readability. And hey, Bendrew, JK, and stunningly beautiful Greek alphabet. Sorry. It's going to be a process, but today we're making our next step. What we've learned, to kind of try to summarize and bring us a little bit up to date, is the axiomatic is part of the process of how scientific inquiry has shifted, or a specific process within scientific and mathematical inquiry. The way that things tend to happen is we have a problematic versus an axiomatic. A problematic will be an issue in the real world. I need to make X. We need something, some sort of new creative way to deal with things. It tends to emerge from, as he likes to reference and go back to like Spinoza or a few others, the ability for us to talk about the difference between drawing a circle by placing a stick and another stick and then a string and then drawing the circle that way, versus the Euclidean method, which is a circle is a series of equidistant points that fully envelop a singular point in the middle. One of these is defining what a circle is, the other is the process of its creation. These two sides of things are kind of what happens within the scientific community, as he's been describing it. The setup goes like this. Someone comes up with some new theory, some new thing, some new solution to X, Y, or Z. This new solution, problematic as it is, causes consternation and outrage and frustration, but also curiosity. And people beat up on it, people work with it, people do all kinds of shit with it. And over time, as we start laying out what the rules are of the thing, as it becomes cleanly defined, as we start really understanding what can be done with it, what tool it is, things like that, at some point it hardens, concretizes to the point where it becomes an axiomatic. The axiomatic is what the thing is, not how to get there. A different setup, problematic versus axiomatic. These two processes, kind of one folds into the other, and it happens commonly. The example that they use in the book, the example used throughout the first text we read by Summers Hall, which is wonderful, and also even referenced inside of this one from Daniel Smith, focuses around even things like how the drawing trade or architecture trade changed. People would once upon a time build based on building. Yeah, I need to make a thing. Okay, well, I make stone. Okay, well, how do you make stone? Let's figure out how to build a fucking house, build a temple, build a thing. At some point, the rules become so clean and so set, the axiomatic of it, that you then can create this sort of completely divorced from the process drawings, architectural drawings, geometric drawings that deal with minutia in extraordinary ways and actually are really hyper prescriptive. This change, Deleuze is talking about very particularly to capital. It's important to capital. There's a lot of reasons for that we're going to get into, but the reason that we're making this move, I want to keep going through, because before we move back to Anti-Oedipus, I want to really have a solid grasp of Deleuze's critique of the axiomatic and understanding of it. And for that, we're going to continue reading Daniel Smith's essay, which right here is page 15 of the PDF. The essay is titled Axiomatics and Problematics as Two Modes of Formalization, Deleuze's Epistemology of Mathematics, which is its own sort of long read, as you can tell, and we've been trudging through it. It is a bear of a read. And it's been a lot. I've had to learn a lot of new things, to say the least. My audio is extra stuffy. Interesting. What do you mean by stuffy, Ben? Blown out. My voice is blown out. Jesus Christ. The fuck? Give me a second. My voice is blown out. Sounds like I'm on speakerphone. How the fuck? Ben, can you hear me? I know you've got voice. Please tell me what you're talking about, because this is horrifying to me. Oh my God! 1 second.
Your voice is like a little crunchy and
Okay.
distorted, and like it sounds like you're on speakerphone in a conference call in an early 2000s office phone.
Fascinating. Is that any better right there?
Better, but strange.
Better but strange. Fascinating. This is very interesting to me. Give me a few seconds as I sort of... I don't have any fucking filters on there. 1 second.
You know, it just... blown out is a good descriptor of how your voice sounds now. Like...
What the fuck?
Too much gain or something.
Oh, that's wonderful. Wonderful. Okay, 1 sec. Okay. Well, I have compressors. I have a compressor on it for the other side, but I don't know. Like, I'm very confused by this. All right, we're gonna deal with this for a minute. Apologies, everyone, before I move on. Why is this doing this? I have no filters on anything right now. I have nothing on. Is this better on your end at all, Ben?
It sounds like your bit rate on your microphone is low or something. Like it sounds like you're using a cheap microphone. I know you're not, but it sounds like...
Oh, no, I get it. That's why this is making me nuts. 1 second. Let me just turn off a bunch of stupid bullshit from... Okay. Now it's come back. Wonderful. Give me 1 moment. I need to unplug and replug. Okay. All right. So we're going to see if this maybe works a little bit better. Is this any better at all, Ben?
Significantly better.
Significantly better? What the fuck? I didn't do anything. I unplugged and replugged a hardware cable.
Yeah, it's a lot better.
What the fuck? I hate everything so much. It's quieter. Well, wait, it's quieter? Okay.
It's a little quieter, but not like...
That's probably good then, because then I can get closer to the mic and it would behave like I thought it was behaving. So we're going to wait for someone in YouTube chat. Oh, it's quieter but clearer. I'll take quieter but clearer. I'll pump myself up a little bit over there. Is this working at all for you, Ben? You happy?
Yeah, it sounds a lot better. Yeah.
Fucking goddamn. I don't. Hey, here's the thing.
It must have just been something with the connection, bro. Like some bad contact somewhere.
I fucking hate. All right. I'm going to turn a thing on here, thing on here. Okay. Ben, this should be very solid and lovely. Was it very solid and lovely, Ben? All right. So I'll assume whatever. All right. So I'm going to maybe restate what I just said in a summary then. And we're going to see if I can get us back to this. I will, one sec, I'll share the PDF I have. I'm sharing it in the Discord. We actually have it above, but you can read along. In Anti-Oedipus, we've made the move from code to the axiom. The reason for this, primarily, is the way that capitalism decodes and breaks things down, necessarily how it works. In a bunch of different ways they've described as we get to this point. The difficulty of us saying decoding then recoding, because capitalism doesn't give a shit about codes, is there's a handful of them. They go through 4. And they say we ultimately have to make our way to, instead, the axiomatic. The axiomatic, we've spent a few weeks going over. And the very short version is that it is in contrast to what Deleuze calls the problematic. We have the problematic and the axiomatic. Problematic is the beginning of the problem, where we have a problem we're going to solve. I've solved it. I've fixed a thing, sort of, you could say, in the real world, in the process of it. I've got a process for doing a thing. The process for doing a thing tends to be new, tends to not be super well defined and super clear. I'm going to code X. I'm going to do this. We see it now with, for example, machine learning or AI. I've got this AI. I've got this machine learning program. What is it? How does it work? Staking those things out and defining them transforms, changes this thing from being a problematic to this axiomatic, a different entire type of project that's happening. And the axiomatic deals a lot more with just the abstract prescriptivism rather than something being sort of born in the world. Deleuze contrasts these very intentionally just throughout all of his works. Most notably, there's a couple places, but 1,000 Plateaus goes really big, which we're not getting super into. A little bit of what is philosophy, which we are going to get into a little bit, and Anti-Oedipus primarily, but it kind of touches into a lot of his other works. Daniel Smith here kind of starts covering it, and we're going to just read and continue on through the Smith paper as we sort of make our way. I hope all of that was a lot more clear, and I apologize for the weird nightmare of whatever the fuck my audio decides to do this week, I guess. But whatever.
Exactly what?
So whatever. That's fine. It seems to be acceptable. All right. So let's do it. One of the aims of Deleuze's new concept of dialectics is to provide a formalization. It was an FT signifier jump scare. I had the YouTube video accidentally playing another tab, going over his terrible what is Attack on Titan take, like one of the worst. One of the aims of Deleuze's new concept of dialectics is to provide a formalization of problematics that would constitute the basis for a theory of ideas, a parallel to the formalization that long ago took place in axiomatics. The difficulties of such a task, however, should be evident from the remarks above. The formalization of theorematics has had a long history in mathematics and philosophy, and the theory of extensive multiplicities, Cantor's set theory, and its rigorous axiomatization, Zermelo Fraenkel et al., is one of the greatest achievements of modern mathematics. Deleuze, by contrast, is proposing to construct a hitherto non-existent philosophical formalization of problematic multiplicities that are, by his own account, selected against by major mathematics. In this regard, Deleuze's relation to the history of mathematics is similar to his relation to the history of philosophy. Even in canonical figures, there is something that escapes the official histories of mathematics. Nonetheless, there were a number of important precursors in mathematics who were working in this direction. Abel, Galois, Riemann, and Poincaré are among the great names in the history of problematics, just as Weierstrass, Dedekind, and Cantor the great names in the discretion program, and Hilbert, Zermelo, Frankel, Gödel, and Cohen the great names in the movement toward formalization and axiomatization. We can therefore highlight at least 3 mathematical domains that have served as precursors in formalizing the theory of problems in mathematics, and which Deleuze appealed to in formulating his own concept of problems as multiplicities. All right. Poincaré. Fair enough. I'm not going to pronounce any of these fucking names the first time ever. Poincaré. We did Riemann last week. We did Galois. We did, I want to say last year, we did some talking about it. I don't know Abel, but hey. These 3 areas we're going to go over now. The first domain is the theory of groups, which initially arose from questions concerning the solvability of certain algebraic rather than differential equations. There are 2 kinds of solutions to algebraic equations, particular and general, whereas a particular solution is given by numerical values. X squared plus 3x minus 4 equals 0 has its solution as x equals 1. A general solution provides the global pattern of all particular solutions to an algebraic equation. The above equation, generalized as x squared plus ax minus b equals 0, has the solution x root of a squared divided by 2 plus b minus a over 2. But such solutions, writes Deleuze, quote, whether general or particular, find their sense only in the subjacent problem which inspires them. This has got to be What is Philosophy, 1994. I'm going to guess What is Philosophy. Probably should get the PDF out and be reading from that. In What is Philosophy, Deleuze and Guattari talk about, at length, scientific axiomatics and mathematical axiomatics. And it's very specific here. And this sentence is incredibly important to how they're talking about this and kind of to what we're talking about. The phrase, whether these solutions find their sense only in the subjacent problem which inspires them. There is a very particular way Deleuze is talking about the mathematics or science, these referent planes, as he kind of talks about them, that they have as their sort of way they operate. Here's the problems, here's this, and they kind of begin to refer to each other. For example, the solution, the nonsense I said above, doesn't work on its own. If I were to just say, here is the solution, here's this generalized equation, means nothing on its own. It works only in the context of being part of the element that inspires them. This is also Cantor and a whole bunch of others. Gödel and others played with this too. By the 16th century, it had been proved that general solvability was possible with squared, cubic, and quartic equations, but equations raised to the 5th power and higher refused to yield to the previous method, via radicals. The puzzle of the quintic remained unresolved for more than 2 centuries, until the work of Lagrange, Abel, and Galois in the 19th century. In 1824, Abel proved the startling result that the quintic was in fact unsolvable, but the method he used was as important as the result. Abel recognized that there was a pattern to the solutions of the first 4 cases, that it was this pattern that held the key to understanding the recalcitrance of the 5th. Abel showed that the question of solvability had to be determined internally by the intrinsic conditions of the problem itself, which then progressively specifies its own field's solvability. I'm too stupid to parse this for you. I'm happy to try, but I am too stupid to parse this for you. We had math. We have Wednesday nights. We tend to have a couple of really brilliant math people who do join us and help sort of make this through. Parsing this particularly in terms of mathematics, though, is going to be just a bear. We can make sense of it, though. Abel showed the question of solvability was determined internally by intrinsic conditions of the problem itself, which then specifies progressively its own fields of solvability. We'll continue because it's about to sort of make its point. Smith is good at this. Hypercomplex, we'll keep moving and we'll get back to it. Building on Abel's work, Évariste Galois developed a way to approach the study of this pattern using the technique now known as group theory. Put simply, and simply should be in quotes, Galois showed that equations can be solved by a formula must have groups of a particular type, that the quintic had the wrong sort of group. The group of an equation captures the conditions of the problem. On the basis of certain substitutions within the group, solutions can be shown to be indistinguishable insofar as the validity of the equation is concerned. In particular, Galois, thank you. In particular, Deleuze emphasizes the fundamental procedure of adjunction in Galois. Starting from a basic field R, successive adjunctions to this field, R2, R to the third, allow a progressively more precise distinction of the roots of an equation by the progressive limitation of possible substitutions. There is thus a succession of partial resolvents or embedding of groups which make the solution follow from the very conditions of the problem. In other words, and this is the previous couple sentences do jumble, but he nails it. In other words, the group of an equation does not tell us what we know about its roots, but rather, as Verriest remarks, the objectivity of what we do not know about them. As Galois himself wrote, in these two memoirs, and especially in the second, one often finds the formula, I don't know. This non-knowledge is not a negative or an insufficiency, but rather a rule or something to be learned that corresponds to an objective dimension of the problem. What Deleuze finds in these two thinkers, following the exemplary analysis of Villemin in his philosophy of algebra, is, quote, a radical reversal of the problem-solution relation, a more considerable revolution than the Copernican. In a sense, one could say that unsolvability plays a role in problematics similar to that played by undecidability in axiomatics. He wraps all these up. We'll keep going. The second domain Deleuze utilizes is the calculus itself. On this score, Deleuze's analyses are based to a large extent on the interpretation proposed by Lautmann in his essay on the notions of structure and existence in mathematics. Lautmann's work is based on the idea of a fundamental difference in kind between a problem and its solution, a distinction that is attested to by the existence of problems without solution. Leibniz, Deleuze notes, had already shown that the calculus expressed problems that could not hitherto be solved or indeed even posed. In turn, Lautmann establishes a link between the theory of differential equations and the theory of singularities, since it was the latter that provided the key to understanding the nature of nonlinear differential equations, which could not be solved because their series diverged. As determined by the equation, singular points are distinguished from ordinary points of a curve. Singularities mark the points where the curve changes directions, an inflection, a cusp, the point where the line bends on the graph, and thus can be used to distinguish between different types of curves. In the late 1800s, Poincare, using a simple nonlinear equation, was able to identify 4 types of singular points that corresponded to the equation: foci, saddle points, knots, and centers, and to demonstrate the topological behavior of the solutions in the neighborhood of such points, the integral curves. On the basis of this work, Lautmann was able to specify the nature of the difference in kind between problems and solutions. The conditions of the problem, this is the part that matters, the conditions of the problem posed by the equation is determined by the existence and distribution of singular points in a differentiated topological field, a field of vectors, where each singularity is inseparable from a zone of objective indetermination, the ordinary points that surround it. In turn, the solution to the equation will only appear with the integral curves that are constituted in the neighborhood of these singularities, which mark the beginnings of the differentiation or actualization of the problematic field. I actually kind of want to go over this one. And yeah, Ben recommends, and he sends it over, Satan, Cantor, and Infinity. Is that Smolian? Smolian shit. That's got to be Smolian shit. I have a good PDF of Satan, Cantor, and Infinity. Also first edition. I love Smolian. Worth reading. It's a really good, it uses stories and riddles to try to explain how Cantor and infinity sort of operated together. He was a professor of logic at Indiana State. Genuinely brilliant dude. Ridiculous puzzle writer who wrote very complicated riddles that explained incredibly complicated things. But let's talk here. So the way that I'm trying not to explain all of calculus because I'm not going to do that well, but we'll just break down the thing itself. And you'll notice phrasing Deleuze uses a lot in other parts of his work. Again, he's making a universalized sort of version of this thing, a larger discussion or version of all of this and sort of applying it to a lot of things. So when we talk about this here, we're talking specifically about math, but Deleuze is applying it elsewhere. So the problem posed by the equation versus the solution, which is an important differentiation. The problem posed by the equation is determined by the existence and distribution of singular points in a differentiated topological field of vectors, where each singularity is inseparable from a zone of objective indetermination, ordinary points that surround it. Now, this is, if we go back and I give you a big calculus problem, a big old equation, it's basically a bunch of dots on the same field that the final solution will be. The solution is the actual curves that constitute the neighborhood and location of those and kind of give a lot more. But they're much more defined. They're the curves. As they've defined here, they've set them up. But singular points is the upfront. The problematic is the singular points. The conditions of the problem posed by the equation is determined by the existence and distribution of singular points in a field of vectors where each singularity is inseparable from a zone of objective indetermination. The ordinary points that surround it. The placement of these things in that larger field, in that larger sort of, again, just think of it as a graph, a bunch of dots are placed, and this is kind of what the problem is. Now, solution appears with the integral curves that are constituted in the neighborhood of those singularities, which mark the beginnings of differentiation of the problematic field. Calculus isn't about solving it in the same way that like algebra does, where we go, oh, x plus 2 equals 7. What is x? I don't even know if that makes sense, but it doesn't. Something in there solves for x. Oh, there's an answer, and it's in a singular point. So that's the answer. Calculus doesn't really play like that and doesn't work like that. It's not meant to solve problems that have just an answer. Instead, it's much more about sort of dealing with the lines on the graph. To say, for no other way to put it, it's dealing with the lines on the graph and the curves and the probabilities, the approaches of things, the way that sort of those elements integrate and play with each other versus a direct singular solution in what we would traditionally call like 1 + 1 = 2. So the conditions of the problem posed by the equation, the conditions of the problem is these points that are in this field of vectors where each singularity, each element that is singular inside of the problem as it's posed. And if we go back, we talk about a problem. He actually showed one, for example, earlier. A particular solution is given by numerical values. Solution equals 1. The problem. This would not be the problem. This would be the solution. This is the setup kind of we're talking about here. But again, this is algebraic. They don't have an example of this right here. And it's such a fucking complex way to talk about it. I'm open if anyone has a thought, by the way. How to go about this one. Because what Deleuze is trying to play with is like the latest pushes in mathematical theory that have come in. At this point, he's talking about people in the 30s and 40s, but it's also alongside him and since. These are not like things that have been fixed or solved. In fact, a lot more direct in this direction has been traveled in mathematics. Maybe we just actually spend some time doing calc. I don't feel like I want to do that, though. That feels like that would be fucking useless. Drew asks, is it important he's using the term differentiation versus differentiation versus differentiation in terms of virtual and actual? That's actually a really good question. I'm going to say it may be a writing thing here, but I'm not positive. Solution of the question appearance, singularities will mark beginnings of differentiation. The C looks like it's, I fucking hate this scan though. The C looks like it's emphasized, which is going to be an issue. Let's see. Because it's going to be, because I don't know if I want to get into like that level of derivatives and all that shit that I'm just at myself having no end of issue with. I don't even know if there's a difference in that sense.
Good to talk.
Oh, please.
I get the feeling that this is a typo.
I'm glad. Thank God.
Differentiation is like a French word. It is used in English, but the specific definition of like differentiation is like in environmental terms. It's the development of cells so that they're capable of like performing specialized functions and shit. So I get the feeling that this might just be a typo within the text.
Thank God, because that's what I was thinking too. So I was like, I don't think there's a difference in the wording. I think it's either a typo or it's just looks funny. Such a weird. It's probably just carrying over the French version as he's talking about it. Make reference to deleuze. There is no different, like differentiation. There's no difference. Like that, they're not real word. This is not like a real. At least I'm unaware of the difference between them, other than one being French and not, because they don't use differentiate with a T the way that differentiation, difference versus difference. Thank you. Glad it's not just me. Dear God. Also, welcome, Lace. Sure. It should be good to talk, by the way. But I do think so. We'll keep moving because I went over this yesterday and I didn't get stuck here. I'm getting stuck here today, probably because I'm fucking mid cup of tea in, and I always need more. But I think if memory serves, he does kind of plow through and keep going, because as he's making these points, the goal for him, for Smith in this paper, is to lay out how Deleuze is seeing the problematic and how he's seeing the process of the problematic in terms of the axiomatic, in terms of how the process of virtual to actual happens, how the axiomatization of things turns into what it does, and how there is a better process. Yeah. We'll continue. We'll keep going. In this way, the thing we're talking about, the ontological status of the problem as such is detached from its solutions. In itself, the problem is a multiplicity of singularities, a nested field of directional vectors which define the virtual trajectories of the curves in the solution, not all of which can be actualized. Don't know calc. I don't know it very well, but this is not a terrible way to describe how you sort of have the placement of that first equation, that it ends up being a whole bunch of vectors that sort of are implying something bigger. Like how do you get to a solution? Here's the problem. There's a bunch of stuff going on, and they're kind of laid out, and they imply the problem being solved in a particular way. They have a lot of parts to them. They're, as he says, they define the virtual trajectories of curves in the solution. They do. This is how calc works. This is going to be really tough. If you haven't, like, intro to calc video on YouTube probably would help immensely. We may watch one of those at the end of this and see if it does. But to continue, nonlinear equations can thus be used to model objectively problematic or indeterminate physical systems like weather. The equations can define the virtual attractors of a system, the intrinsic singularities towards which the trajectories will tend in the long term. But they cannot say in advance which trajectory will be actualized. The equation can't really be solved, making accurate prediction impossible. Problem, in other words, has an objectively determined structure of virtuality apart from its solutions, actuality. Now, weather, great example of this. Give me every bit of data you have in the entire world on what weather is happening at any given moment. We have an extraordinary wealth of it. We have a lot. There's a lot of points, and there's a lot of constant sort of movement. We know where things were a moment ago, and we know where they are now. A lot of little tiny vectors placed all over the earth, right? This setup, we can create equations in mathematics that sort of models this, that sort of sets this up. And it's going to go, okay, all of these things are happening. All of these little tiny measurements are pointing in these directions. And it will predict the next. It kind of shows off. This is kind of actually probably a better example than what I've been using. But at no point will it say, this is the answer. It will generally be pushing in a lot of different directions. A lot of stuff happening, and complexity sort of doesn't allow it no matter how deep we get. But even then, every little tiny vector that's being placed on this graph, every single one, which one is the one that's actually, this is not how calc works. Calc doesn't point in this way towards this thing. Not really how we set up. The equation doesn't get to be solved. It means that ultimately we don't get to say, here's the solution in a deeply perfect way. So when we talk a problem, the weather, as an example, has an objectively determined structure of virtuality. It's a subjectively determined structure of weather. We know data snapshots at any point. It doesn't really have a solution. It doesn't really have an actuality at any point. Actually, probably the better way to describe most of what we're talking about here. Weather is going to be a really good one. I'm going to keep that in mind because that's a really... So we have, does everyone at this point understand the difference between the problem and the solution, between virtuality and the actuality? It's not predictions. It's not potentiality. These are not the way that we're sort of talking about it. We have objectively determined things. We have all these little measurements that are pointing in very particular directions. And overall, this problem, which exists, this thing, kind of ends up being in this place where we don't really have a complete totalizing solution. It doesn't get to be accurately predicted. Important. Capital, by the way. I've got really good examples for this for capital, but we're going to get there. To continue. But there is no revolution in the problem-solution reversal, continues Deleuze. Quote, as long as we remain tied to Euclidean geometry, we must move to a geometry of sufficient reason, a Riemannian type differential geometry, which tends to give rise to discontinuity on the basis of continuity, or to ground solutions in the conditions of problems. This leads to Deleuze's third mathematical reason, the differential geometry of Gauss and Riemann. Gauss had realized the utilization of a differential calculus allowed for the study of curves and surfaces in a purely intrinsic and local matter, that is, without reference to a global embedding space like Cartesian coordinates of analytic geometry. Riemann's achievement, in turn, was to have used Gauss's differential geometry to launch a reconsideration of the entire approach to the study of space by analyzing the general problem of n-dimensional curved surfaces. He developed a non-Euclidean geometry, showing Euclid's axioms were not self-evident, of a multidimensional, non-metric, non-intuitable, any space whatever, he termed a pure multiplicity or manifold. Manifold's actually, I don't know if he used multiplicity, I think we've done that. But he used manifold, or he used it, the hilarious German version, Mannigfaltigkeit. Sounds awesome. He began by defining the distance between 2 points, whose corresponding coordinates differ only by infinitesimal amounts. Defined the curvature of the multiplicity in terms of the accumulation of neighborhoods, which alone determines connections. The way it was explained last week, for those of you who weren't here, it's actually probably my favorite, is if you think of a fractal, right? Just think of the edge of a fractal and how you can always sort of zoom in further, and there's continuously little bits that sort of zoom back out. But at some vantage, depending on where you're at, you sort of end up in this place where it looks like it's flat. And then as you zoom in, you see that it's actually really, really spiky and then gigantic, but there's still this flat part. The way that we look at logarithmic things, where suddenly these little spikes, little tiny divots, become a flat surface, because we don't care about one more or one less or variabilities of one at the higher end of a logarithmic scale, not in the same way we would care about it if we were plotting things perfectly. This different take on the setup, this differential version of mathematics, differential version of geometry, puts us in a place where the actual setup is very much based on its local conditions to itself, not on some larger scale Euclidean version of points, how they work, how they operate, what's a square, what's the angle, what's this, what's that, what's this value, how's this value work. It's always sort of there, but instead this sort of other version, manifold, and fold is going to be important for Deleuze too. So to zoom in on that and have it restated, for our purposes, the two important features of Riemannian manifold are its variable number of dimensions, n-dimensionality, and the absence of a supplementary dimension, which would impose on it extrinsically defined coordinates or unity. This is the big deal, extrinsically defined coordinates. If we think of, if you've ever used a 3D CAD program, there's always, in every graph, every 3D graphing calculator, 0, 0, 0 point. Very non-Riemannian setup. This would be 3 dimensions, X, Y, and Z. There's a 0 point, and everything is able to be mapped perfectly to it at 1.2Z, 1.478X, whatever it is, and we've got a perfect spot. We know exactly where that is. But not so much with Riemannian. As Deleuze writes, a Riemannian multiplicity is an n-dimensional, continuous, defined multiplicity. By dimensions, we mean the variables or coordinates upon which a phenomenon depends. Continuity, we mean a set of differential relations between changes in these variables. For example, quadratic form of the differentials of the coordinates. Definition, we mean the elements reciprocally determined by these relations, elements which cannot change unless the multiplicity changes its order and metric. As we're playing through this, we're going to kind of continue in DNR. I'm going to probably annoy Eldoran at some point, see if he'll join, because this is the fun stuff. DNR is a huge fun. But this is again, to get back at that, it doesn't go back to the reference of another. This phrasing is the important thing. There isn't another reference playing inside of it. That's the thing. It's based on its own sort of locality. It's not at this coordinate in this way, and so we can relate it to a larger system and blah, blah, blah. It's like, no. If it changes, it changes. The multiplicity changes its order in its metric. The multiplicity changes its order in its metric, but it's its own multiplicity. It doesn't have to rely on this global hierarchical larger system. You'll start to see why he was drawing hopefully you're maybe already seeing how he's drawing conclusions and connecting things. Now to go to DNR. Before I do, is everyone good? Any questions here? Any shit here? Because again, I'm noticing you guys like being rabbit holed. Good. It's a good stream for you to be on if you like rabbit holing and incredibly useless but fascinating things. Anything?
So in
Any
this,
comments? Oh, please.
in this like paradigm, I guess, is this a talking entirely in kind of like in theoretical, in heuristics or anything like that, or does the does this have any kind of is Deleuze kind of like getting at a larger point that can be implied to like more physical forms of mathematical and scientific discovery?
How I'm reading it, and again, we're not there yet, so we'll get there, but this isn't even just about mathematic discovery. This is about understanding the things that determine the very production of desire itself. So
Right.
the way desire operates, the way it works, the way we find ways to trap it is no longer within the codes of connective syntheses, of selecting, no longer in the disjunctive of exclusivity or inclusivity of that. It's now this sort of third tier, this conjunctive where some other thing is being created, some other thing is set up and falls back on and deals with production in a very different way. Because of that, the way that it does that is by creating and playing with the axiomatics. And axiomatics aren't just, oh, it's the rule mom and dad taught me, but instead very particular tiny little bits that constantly are informing and changing us. And Deleuze is trying to push us towards, and we'll get through this because, again, chapter 3 is about how capitalism is axiomatic. The critique of that follows, which is all of chapter 4, which is about the effectively problematic like this, but in psychoanalysis explicitly. And so he's going to integrate it into the sort of space of psychoanalysis in chapter 4 of Anti-Oedipus. So we're at the point where he's introducing axiomatics. And that's why we're taking this diversion where it's like, okay, down the road, we're going to go travel. We're going to see all the stuff about axiomatics, see what's going on, and make our way back through the rest of the reading. It's a fun one, I know, but it's kind of the only way to do it.
It's mind melting.
It is a lot. And it is a lot.
I mean, I'm down with it, but it is mind melting.
Yeah, and it's the goal for me is to try to get through this because it's one of the things, and it happens, this is our third reading, and every time we get to a certain point, the first reading took almost 2 years because it was a lot. We didn't understand anything. We had so much amazing help. The second time through, it was like, okay, refine a few things. And then this time around, it's like, okay, there are 5 or 6 things that there simply is not a lot of literature written on. I've wasted a lot of time reading an extraordinary amount of doctoral theses and books, and other things. And Deleuze spent some time writing about the axiomatic and problematic, and he does so in a few different ways. And we'll get to all of those, like in chapter 4 especially, because logic of sense is about the problematic and making sense. And he has already Smith uses these terms very particularly of making sense, and so is Deleuze, because that's how he talks about it. So it's a lot of interconnected parts, but there's no like, here's what an axiomatic means, and there's like 3 papers, and my job is to explain this stuff, so I should know better. So that's the goal, is to come out the other side of trying to find ways to explain these things a little bit crisper and give people a little bit more direction. That makes sense. Here's hoping.
No, you're doing good, man.
Well, we'll see. DNR is going to be a bear. We have a difference in repetition reading. Elderon on the server runs it. Highly recommended. Go check the events and sign up for that. It's also on our YouTube. Keep an eye out for it. I'll be joining that a little bit as well because obviously we're about to talk about DNR, and Elderon's like, you can't do that without talking to me. So I'm fine with it. We'll be doing a little bit of that, but for now, we're going to dive into the next paragraph and make our way through. It's a lot. Be ready. Be ready. Indifference and repetition. Deleuze draws upon all these resources to develop his general theory of problematic or differential multiplicities. The 5th chapter of DNR, Ideas and the Synthesis of Difference, draws on all these resources in order to present a theory of ideas as problematic. Problems are, which in effect presents Deleuze's new concept of dialectics. The formal conditions of a problematic idea can be briefly summarized as follows. We're going to read each one and discuss. 1. The elements of the multiplicity are merely determinable. Their nature is not determined in advance by either a defining property or an axiom, such as something in extensionality. Rather, they are pure virtualities that have neither identity, nor sensible form, nor conceptual signification, nor assignable function. Principle of determinability. This, back to that math shit. This first one, they're merely determinable, not determined, and they're not pre-stated. A very particular usage that Deleuze has here, and I'm going to probably be a little bit nuts on specific, because the phrasing here, their nature is not determined in advance by either defining property or axiom in extensionality. In extensionality means and outside. The way that we were looking at the earlier algebraic or calculus solutions, and we're like, oh look, this rule in algebra for all of these equations like that only works because of that, and also that one only works because of this, and it becomes this sort of infinite recursion back. Deleuze talks about this in logical sense as well. Also, he talks about it here in DNR, that this is, the multiplicities are determinable. Can be determined. They're not. They are determinable. That's a very important distinction. 2, they are nonetheless determined reciprocally as singularities in the differential relation, a non-localizable ideal connection that provides a purely intrinsic definition of the multiplicity as problematic. The differential relation is not only external to its term, but constitutive of his term. Principle of reciprocal determination. Enjoy this journey, because I think this is awesome, but this is like where you start making leaps beyond things. So tell me if anyone here, by the way, feel free to disagree. I'm going to ping Eldoran and be like, get in here. Eldoran. Get in here and tell me if I'm a dumb. All right. So, on the one hand, multiplicity. Great, multiplicities are. Oh, there you are. Look, see, I said your name 3 times and you.
I'm like a fucking, what's his name? Beetlejuice.
Oh, that was the joke. Tell me at any point if I'm really stupid. Okay? Because we're in Daniel Smith's essay. If you want to show a screen, we're discussing DNR, because he goes right into it, and he goes into the 5th chapter, which I know we haven't gone over yet. I know I've promised, and we are going to go over it on stream, and I'm going to spend time going through that, and I do want to. But we're here anyway, so this is how it works. So on the one hand, we've got his formal conditions of problematic idea. The first one, that the elements of a multiplicity are merely determinable. They are not determined. They are not determined by something that pre-exists it or determined by something outside of the multiplicity. They're determinable in the sense of like they're knowable. We might be able to determine them. They can be determined, but they are not determined. They are determinable. Fair?
Yeah, that's fair.
Okay, 2.
I mean, yeah, go on.
No, please.
Yeah, I mean, just Deleuze's lingo.
It is fun,
in
isn't
DNR.
it?
Yeah, it's a nightmare.
So the idea is that these things are, as Smith says, they are pure virtualities that have neither identity nor sensible form. Sensible form is the important thing. Nor conceptual signification, nor assignable function. They're determinable. They are determinable. That's literally it. Like, they're determinable. They're nothing more than determinable. 2, they are nonetheless determined reciprocally as singularities in a differential relation, a non-localizable ideal connection that provides a purely intrinsic definition of multiplicity as problematic. The differential relation is not only external to its terms, but constitutive of it. Reciprocal determination, and this is one of the ones that's really fun, to me at least, because this is like where your brain, for me, I feel my brain starting to sort of twist and have a stroke. But this is where we start talking about things are determinable. Now, we can determine any one of them almost through this sort of system of like using the weather as an example. We've had the weather come up a couple times. Overall, the points that are, we would consider the weather, the data we're able to collect, all the little weather stations and all the little data about barometric pressure, wind speed, or all the little tiny facets, all of those things are determinable. They are not right now determined. They were a moment ago, and we can measure it and collect it, but they're not determined. They're changing. They're constantly shifting based on a whole host of fucking things. But any singular place or point or vector that is in that is determinable. But the only way that we kind of work to understand the weather is through this reciprocal determination, where we go, okay, well, here, we take this idea of measurement from outside, we look in, and we do the thing. That the differential relation that sort of plays out, that makes localized elements of weather, wind speed and pressure and how they match, and low pressure front, like little bits like that, these are external to the terms within the multiplicity. They exist outside the multiplicity, but they are constitutive of the multiplicity itself. This is the closest I can get to saying how I understand this. Am I off? And by how much?
No. I mean, no, you're not off. It's always good to like imagine this visually, right? Which is what deleuze does. So think of the virtual as like basically the way he describes is just like a differential equation, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a way of describing a thing, which is what he's doing. It's a way of describing a thing in a way where you don't determine it immediately. So like you can, for example, you can provide a general differential equation of a circle, for example, which is not determined, right? And you can provide it for any sort of curvature space, right? It's how it sort of works. And then this equation, yet undetermined, right? No lines have been drawn, but what you have sort of determined, sort of not determined, but what you sort of drawn out are these sort of, if you imagine like a Cartesian grid, you've imagined these sort of zones of influence. So like if you were to draw a line through these sections, this is how it would sort of go, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can't sort of imagine it. You just sort of like imagine sort of like an interplay of forces. That's what's like a system of forces. That's sort of what multiplicity is for Deleuze. It's you know, it's like, it's just like a thing that can sort of, that has this organizational structure, but not in a way that we think of like something organizing something, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's right. Then if you draw those lines, right, you get these moments of in a, for example, in a, like, let's say you determine, you actualize this sort of multiplicity, this we call it this virtual idea, right? This equation, and you get a line, right? You get it, like you can you know, a curve of some sort, right? It can be different ways, right? And this curve has certain points on it. For example, you get like, for example, the points where curves shifts directions, right? You know, I forgot what they're called in, I know it in like Croatian terminology, but I don't know how it's called in English, right? You know how like there's these like high points and then it starts going down, right?
Yes.
Right.
I mean,
right.
There's a lot of things that could be that
Inflections.
The
Inflections.
inflection
Thank
point.
you.
There we go. Yeah, we were talking about these. The phrasing that he used a little bit earlier is the types of points that exist and how they were set up. He was using and talking about a moment ago. Sorry, just 2 seconds, because I want to connect this to what we're reading here. Not on. Finding it. That's fine. Please continue.
So these inflections are the singular. I don't know if you went through this. I'm sort of coming in blind here. These
I mean,
inflections
we
are the singular points.
literally did, but not with the same wording. So please continue.
Yeah. So another way to use singular points for deleuze is the notion of the event, right? Something happens, right? Something happens to the line. It shifts direction. It's an event. Singular points, like the way that deleuze uses the singular points in difference and repetition is the same that he's going to use in like the way that he uses the event in logic of sense. And it's this notion of a thing that sort of this event that sort of reciprocally determines the virtual without it, without
actualizing.
Without abolishing it, right?
Yeah.
Completely.
It maintains its virtuality because it's the differential exists effectively. I don't want to say it's external and it's an extension, but that's probably not far from it. Because you're talking about basically the way that the problematic operates or the multiplicity operates is entirely virtual, and the entirety of the thing stays virtual. The points in relation to each other stay virtual, and we can kind of compare things, but we can also sort of glance in and look, but it doesn't abolish the virtuality of it. It doesn't concretize and set that in stone, because these things are ultimately in relation to each other primarily, even if we have measurements or other things that can work from outside of it. This is the sort of way that we end up working with it, by nature, problems like this. And it's why I like this phrasing of it. I use weather, but there's a multitude of things you can talk about. Hyper complex systems tend to work better when you talk about them this way, that unto themselves, there isn't really a cause and effect or thing that we can sort of point out. We can measure from outside. We can go, oh, look, here's the wind speed here. These 10 bits of wind speed, these are working. This is the vectors. These are going. Probably, like, we can talk about what they are, but their relationship to each other and how they determine each other, that's not determined by how we talk about them, right?
Yeah, right. And one can invert this. So this is a great. It's one of the examples, right? For deleuze, there's also an inversion to it, right? If someone like, what's his name, the dude that wrote the book on assemblage. I forgot. He's really good. The other dude that wrote the book on the assemblage, not the Landa. Buchanan, right? Ian Buchanan.
Ian, yeah.
Yeah, but what he points to quite correctly is that virtual is also material. So if you think about this relation can be inverted. If you think about like all the material relations happening, right? Sort of this like chaotic nature, right? That can be the virtual, and then the actualized part is the idea that you have of your head of a thing, right? So that's the representational part. Because for deleuze, there is not this clear separation from material to like ideal, or from ideal to material. Virtualities are called ideal because of their problematic nature, but they're not ideal in a sense as oppositional to the material. Instead, all of it sort of plays a role, right? There's a mixture of both, like what people consider material and ideal, all of it in there, sort of that interplays with each other, because he's really trying to avoid this dualism, and provides that's why his dualism is the dualism of virtual and actual, that in both instances implies both what we would traditionally consider ideal and material, right? That's why, for example, if you talk about like in AO, right, flux and like in terms of like in terms of the axiomatic of capitalism, right? There's both actual material things being in flux, as in the economy, right? But another part to it is the sort of the accounting of it that comes from it, right? And this is important. If you read the seminars, like the first seminars on the flux and the logic of fluxes, it's called. Then it comes clear how much deleuze sort of like posits, for example, the sort of the axiomatic of capital is not sort of it's ideal in its sort of abstraction from the actual material things, and it works the same way almost in difference and repetition, right?
Seems to.
So I don't know if I'm saying nonsense. I sort of am.
No, I
here.
mean, technically we all are, but no, I don't think that's happening. I have a question for you that we got. Also, Deleuze uses, well, at least in the translation, differentiation and differentiation are two words that are used a lot inside of this, and I've seen many takes of it. Did someone just post? I avoid trying to send people to the subreddit, but Adrian Parr has a definition there that embraces the two. How do you understand the difference between differentiation and differentiation?
Well, one of the so I mean, I usually go through the problem of like, what is Deleuze sort of doing? So
Yeah.
for him, the problem is of, so he wants to posit the notion of these virtual ideas, which sort of solves the problem of difference itself, because we don't, like, if ideas are these multiplicities, or like if everything basically is these multiplicities or plays a role in these multiplicities that are non-determinable in a normal way, right, then we can go away from thinking in representational terms and sort of try to consider things as they're sort of genetically differing, right? That's why he uses Bergson and the notion of the memory as the virtual memory and so on. Because he finds that interesting, because it's not the actual that we're seeing now. It sort of stays in opposition to it, right? But the other problem is, well, we can always posit something that Badiou accuses him of, for example. Let's say, like, well, there's only one virtual. So you've sort of, everything is the same now, right? And for Deleuze, there has to be then a process within the virtual itself that differentiates these, so without making it too complicated, because that's the whole fourth chapter, without that differentiates these ideas between themselves in the first place. And that's a differentiation, right? Or differentiation. I'm not sure which one comes first.
Well, I mean, and this is the frustrating thing is, in English there's no difference. Like, I don't mean that to be cute, although that was a clever way to probably phrase it. But there's no differentiation. Is not really a thing. This comes from the translation. The translation is important, but it feels like it's getting lost, because how I understand it in French is that differentiation is our word for differentiation. They with the T, they're the same word. They do the same thing. They operate the same. Whereas when he's talking about differentiation, he's talking about the differential function in calculus, and he's talking about the differential. Not different, because there is no such thing as a differential. We happen to use the T for all of these things. And so adding the C to denote what we commonly do call the differentiation feels odd to me. And so it's troubling, because we use the same different as basically the word for all of this, whereas in French they have two versions of this. And so, like, it feels like we're just adding a bunch of stuff, because ultimately differentiation is the function that's in the derivative. This is the calculus. This is mathematics.
I mean,
the differential.
To be honest, it's also clumsy in French, and that's what Deleuze wants it to be. He's
playing towards that, but he is using the differential when he's doing that.
So with the differentiation with a T, right? What's important is so the way in which these ideas themselves differentiate themselves, right? Because it's not one big idea. It's not one big multiplicity. Like, people usually think that you can sort of reduce Deleuze to, like, everything is this big connected thing. That's not what Deleuze is saying. There needs to be a differentiated thing within this thing itself, right? Sort of a perspectivist. It's kind of like Leibnizian monads, right? But a bit more radical. So we talked about singular points, no? So these events that happen, they are in relation to the virtual, right? Sort of they are of it, but they're not in it directly, right? They provide from the problematic by actually happening, right? They are events. Singularities are events. And these events are that which reciprocally determine the multiplicity. That's why Deleuze's philosophy is sort of also called philosophy of the event. They play an extremely big role because they are that differentiates multiplicities from it between each other, right? And the multiplicities relate then according to these singular terms, same as in calculus, right? You get so these singular terms are that which defines the curve to a big extent. I mean, it's basically what defines the curve. It's basically what you use, right? And the rest is what is called like he calls it the determinant points. I think these are like the points in between the important ones, right? And then differentiation with a C is basically thing that, you know, provides for differing that we see in nature, right? Oh, we separate things in categories. You know, there is Brooks and there's Elderon and there is Ben was here, right? And we can talk about these general things, the way things are composed and the way things are differentiated, right? But with a C. And I think that's how I don't know. I've never explained this in a while. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's one of those things that I find translation fascinating, as you know.
I know.
But I think that generally is kind of how I grasp it. There's a difference. Feels like I don't know. But it's not beside the point.
Another point is a differentiation with a D pertains to the virtual, whereas differentiation with a C pertains to the actual. Let's say there's a differential calculus with a T, and then there's differences with a C.
Why?
Why what?
The differential is actual?
No. With a so the
Differentiation. Why? Why is that the case?
why is that the case for Deleuze?
Yeah.
Because he first posits, you know, first of two types of multiplicities, and for him it's important, again, it's important to posit difference as it works in both ways. So you have this fundamental differentiation, right? It is the determination of multiplicities as such through their singular points.
No, I get that there's a thing and he's got a concept, and I get that he may use that. But again, differentiation is in French, differentiation in English. I have my faculties make differentiation. There's differentiation between the trees in my bed. Some shit like that. That's the same exact differentiation. That's the same word. It's the same word. That's how we translate. There, as far as I know, I would need to see him using the word differentiation with a T. I don't know where that would be. Where would he have done this? I just want to find a use.
Basically, end of chapter 4. I think just like the last paragraph is when he uses it.
Of difference and repetition?
Yeah. I'll check my German translation because I don't have my French original at hand because I borrowed it to Larve and she never gave it back.
Terrible people. Okay.
Yeah, even in German, right? They use the version Differenzierung mit Z, which is correspondent of the word see in English. And then there is the differentiation with the, that's correspondent to the idea. One of the things Patton actually translated well, and I appreciate for him. It's also an easy job.
Fascinating, because it's such an odd. It's a particular choice, but again, no, he doesn't discuss this anyway.
He does. Legitimately, there is a definition. I mean, I'll paste you the English one. I just found it.
Just tell me where it is.
Page 221.
Page 221 of the
basically.
English.
Yeah.
Can you give me the what is that section where?
That's the last page of chapter 4.
Last page
just
of
before
chapter
chapter
4.
5.
Perfect.
That's just one of the parts. Like I could find. There's the. That's where he also says the very famous quote that that the math is for him just a technical model, right? Which sort of is a big argument against people who are trying to sort of present him as an ontologist of mathematics. I'm not making that argument. It's generally the thing that people take to make that argument.
First.
It's the 20. I can send you one. Is that
No,
I'll send it here.
I've got the French one. And I just have like the
Ah.
worst scan of it. One of those awful, like someone scanned it and then put it on a big sheet of paper for some reason. So I have to like zoom in. It's terrible. Maybe.
I wish I had my fucking
I don't want images. I just want the text. All right, good.
Is there even
Last part of
images?
chapter 4. Last part of chapter 4 before chapter 5. You said.
Yeah, can you put it on the page for me?
I'm in the frame. I'm in the.
Or send it to me, either way.
Footnotes. Drop the PDF. Terrible PDFs every. Type it in there and then 274 of the PDF.
Wait.
Here.
Nice.
In real quick. All right, I'm at the last paragraph. I mean, that's how you know that like scanning things have a fucking sense of humor. Like, what are the odds I would get this great PDF that's like, okay, so which is he using? I don't know if you can see. I'm gonna zoom the fuck in because I think it's fucking hilarious.
Oh yeah, the little image.
It's fucking. Are you kidding me? The one thing I wanted, the one letter we care about. Like, what are the odds? I mean, of all the fucking things, what are the fucking odds? It's just fucking unbelievable. Okay. So the rest of this, though, is not off terribly, I think, generally. PDF system. Want that. Let me see what I can. I love finding that.
I know.
Like, I know I've had to deal with your.
I don't think it's nightmare. Maybe for you.
Other PDF. Oop. $74. Entered. I think it's the. Expanded it really big to laugh about that. Terrifying. One of those moments that's, oh God, like I used to joke where it's like, God has a sense. What the fuck? Okay, get the other text off the screen. At that last paragraph. The way it's sort of written, sort of semi reading it, broken as it can. Kind of start right after the whole. However, math and biology intervene here. Technical models for the exploration of two halves of. Why am I getting pinged? Automatic. Everything. All right. Back to this. The idea of the dialect is doubly determined. The variety of differential relations. See, to me, it's it's particular the way he's using it. Is it has to do with, because it's here, it's differentials, and then because it's the way he sort of, the idea of the dialectic is doubly determined in the variety of differential relations and the distribution of correlative singularities. He calls differentiation. We would call differentiation.
I don't know if that's just a bad scan, but in that point, in my German translation as well as English, and I think, he uses, for some reason, there is differentiation. On other parts of the book, I just looked through when he talks about the singularities, it's with a T.
Oh no, it's the next sentence is the other use, because he defines both of them here, basically.
I know that sentence, yeah.
But it's the next sentence is as well. Because it's the next sentence, the actualization of sorry.
Aesthetic
Yeah, and
is
doubly
determined.
Specification of the composition.
And then again, differentiation.
Differentiation.
Which is not, yeah, which are sort of the same words, which is weird. Again, I don't know if I don't have my book with me. This is just a weird thing here. If you look in, if first off, if you read the chapter, he spends extensive time talking about differentiation and how, you know, the differentiation of the virtual itself has to be considered differently as a difference. You use an example of the bones, of genes, of like he goes through it all. So his big point is that there is these two differentiating processes that one has to take into consideration, right? Because it's the
effet qui détermine et déclenche la. This last bit here is where it seems to use both of them even in the same fucking sentence. I am going.
See, like here he uses differentiate, so with a "the" of like differentiation of the idea, right? And that's the important
versus
part.
the differentiation of the actual.
No, that is the virtual. And differentiation of the actual, just a couple of words before.
Differentiate.
So he's talking about dramatization. It's a dramatization. She is that. Elle says elle.
Yeah,
she is that.
Right. Yes.
Which so I'm not really proficient at French.
No, right? me neither, my friend.
Which I don't know, but which differentiates the differentiation of the actual, de l'actuel, to which blah 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 corresponds to differentiation with a T of the idea. Idea is the virtual. Actual gets differentiated with a C. Idea is differentiated with a T. Right, and he's interested in this point in the notion of dramatization, which is a bit, it's unimportant for us now.
Nothing is unimportant for us.
All right, we would require that would require a whole summary of chapter 4, which
sometimes it does.
Pay me.
Yeah, right, but it's the specific phrasing of that very, very particular sentence, I think, is in because it's who determines or declension triggers causes who qui différence la différenciation de l'actuel dans la correspondance avec la differentiation. The differentiates the differentiation of the actual. Who
which corresponds, or like it's
in its correspondence with the differentiation of an.
Yeah.
So this seems like it's working backwards from Roth wrote. Like this is the opposite of. But maybe I'm too. Good Lord.
Well, why do you mean it's? Why do you think it's opposite?
Well, we're talking about the use of the C as being maybe I'm misunderstanding. Let me try to restate it because I'm going to be wrong, but I just want to get out there so that way you can at least. So if I have who is the she?
She is the Dramatisierung. Sorry, I just said the version. The dramatization.
Yeah, the
dramatizing.
The actor, because it's a kind of a phrasing he talks about also in. Reading back a little bit. What is this third aspect of without a doubt? Grammatization, pre-quantitative and pre-qualitative.
Yeah.
He's
introducing the next chapter.
Is here. Here says L is her, in fact, which determines or triggers, differentiates the differentiation. The idea is the problematic, and correct on that.
Yes.
So,
But only in relations to the singular element.
Right. Only, yeah, correct. But when he says idea, we're not talking about ideal. We're talking about idea in his version of the differentiation ID.
Yeah, in his weird reading of Plato through Kant. Yeah, it's
Yes.
like it's basically
Very weird reading of
Platonic
Plato through Kant.
It's quite simple to understand. Like, it's like it's not the idea of like the perfect thing, but the idea of how to determine a thing, right? Because Kant says the thing in Plato is that he didn't provide for essences of things, but for the problems through which an essences can be even discovered. For example, like the notion of the philosopher is that which provides for a differentiation between the philosopher, like the idea of the philosopher is that which provides differentiation between the philosopher and the sophist, right? And then Deleuze just runs wild with it.
I think with that, we're going to move back to the other text.
Hope I didn't make it more complicated, but I'm curious.
You ruined everything.
I'm curious. What did you sort of see as a problem? Because for me, like, so coming as a German speaker, for me this makes complete sense. If I'm talking about differentiation with a T, it's clearly sort of this sort of mathematical thing, right? Here's how I would talk about the calculus, right? But if I put a C in there, right, or sort of a Z, I'm talking about more of like a differentiating, like sort of a like this.
Which,
is
by the way,
this.
when you say I'm talking about a differentiating, that's spelled with a T in English.
Yeah, because I mean, again, it's spelled with a. In German, it works a bit more. It's a bit better. There's sort of both words there, but it's also weird. Like I think just Deleuze is trying to be weird.
He usually is. He usually does weird from a position though, and I feel like the closest, and from what I'm seeing even in this though, is that differentiation he's talking about in the almost differential sense. That's when he uses the T, because in French you wouldn't use the T. You don't, unless it's the mathematical use, as you're saying. And so he is playing towards the mathematical use of it. We're talking about the axiomatic. The axiomatic we're using is not the colloquial early to bed and early to rise kind of sayings, as we may. Oh, yeah, no, I know an axiom or two. It's not that. We're talking about something that's much more foundational of like the reality of desiring production. So when we talk about that axiomatic, we are playing into set theory and using mathematical terms in a universal sense that they really weren't built for, but kind of fucking works because Deleuze is being, in Deleuze's way, weird. He's poked from math to this. And so to me, the way I'm coming away from this is that he's using differentiation as the discussion of bringing in that concept of the differential as a particular operand, as a mathematical element towards difference, which is different for English speakers. So it's going to be tougher for us because we don't really have, using C in English is almost a way of like countermanding this and undoing it, but it's, to me, fucking it up because it's not the point. When we're talking about difference and when we're discussing it, we should be, as we're talking about how difference is made, difference with a C, and the differentiation of things, how the differentiation happens. By adding C to that, we're actually creating a special sort of quality to the thing that he's not playing with. And we're making the thing he is playing with the boring one in English, if that makes sense.
Can you repeat the last part? That's escaped me a bit.
So he's playing in your language that you're talking about here, German and French. When he's playing, it's clear because the everyday use of differentiation would be with a C. But when he's using a T, it's like, oh, I'm doing funny joke, like that kind of shit. He's, oh, I'm playing. Do you see? I'm pointing in that direction. In English, though, it doesn't work to do that because we use T every day, differentiation. So if we go in and we say, okay, well, we're going to translate it with a C, it does the opposite. We're saying, oh, look, we're playing with a thing on that side. That's not the side we're playing with, though. That's not. That's just difference. That's different. That's just the different, But we're adding a C to it, which isn't doing anything and actually not playing. And the T.
So it would.
It makes that like, ooh, I'm playing with the thing deleuze isn't playing with. Stop that. Like that. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's like when I'm in English reading it, I'm like, oh, he's making a joke. He's doing a thing because he does it a lot. But because the joke works the other direction, it completely negates or in fact malforms the sense being made of the thing.
Yeah. Because in German we would say Differenzierung. That's it. Like just like, oh, ich kann das differenzieren. I can, differentiate it.
And we would say differentiate, and it would be different, and it would be differentiated by the differentiator.
And so for us, it's clear, like, okay, so there's this, so because he's doing the T, he's putting in the virtual, that's like the, and that's what he, like.
And it's almost backwards for the English user, because when it's like we're adding a C, oh, that's the one, ooh, that's the play. No, stop, that's not the direct, no, that's not the play. He's playing the other way. He wants that to be the, he's pulling in something in the other way by, and it becomes deeply confusing. It would be better if, for example, this is my fantasy land, but it would make more sense is if we changed differential in English to a C. Then it's like, oh, we're making differential and difference. Oh, we're playing in that direction, and that's how he's doing the word play and trying to pull in stuff instead of the other direction.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to get these word plays around.
Yeah.
It'll be less faithful to deleuze, but it might get things across. Like, for example, in my translation, what the guy that I sent you the books from, Joseph Vogel, did as well. He accentuated the T, so he made every different, like in the book, every differentiation with a T, he put it in cursive. Not the whole sentence, just that part of where the T starts.
Right.
So like it's really clear. Like that's what an editor should do, right? It should make things clearer for readers who are reading this in their like mother tongue, as opposed to the original language. Like it makes it incredibly clear that like this word is a bit weird, so you can't overread it. You're sort of like you're stuck on it.
It's a lot. Let's see what he uses the word differentiator all through DNR. Well, it's tough because I'm actually going to find. Give me where did you find that quote? Because I want to see what he wrote in French. That's the tough part, is he didn't write in English, so it's. This is the thing, is like, again, for us, differentiator. If I were to say, oh, hey, I've got an idea for a new game, the differentiating factor makes it special would be using, in French, it would be with a C. So it is the normative usage. For English would be RT. That's the challenge we run into. 209 English. It's a really fascinating. I find translation stuff, especially with just endlessly fascinating, because they tend to help me, at least, crystallize my understanding of things. Something that, oh, that's good. Does not talk about. Look. a second. Sorry, everybody. Man, look at it. It's fun, isn't it? Hey, Drew, this is the plan would happen.
Always more work.
Always more work. Ah, there we go. Nine. Fucking, I'm just gonna lose. It's got the fucking. Are you fucking kidding? The fucking image missing thing. Got the image missing thing over the fucking T or the C. Like, what the fuck, man? I don't.
And that's exactly, I checked in my in my translation, but that's the part where he does the sort of little slash between, like, sort of plays with the both words at once. Interestingly, just sort of like.
No, it's where he says intégration est le sens mouvant inverse de la différenciation, ma forme plus haut, un process original de differentiation. Then that sentence, so the first sentence there, the integration in this sense is no way the opposite of differentiation, rather forms of original process of differentiation. That's the T, that's with a C, a C in the original. So for us, the differentiation. But the other, well, differentiation determines the virtual content of the idea as a problem. Differentiate, it's actually translated with T's in both of those. It's actually T's in both of those in the original. No, wait, different. Okay.
No, it's for some reason that specifics.
That sentence is actually different. It's well, differentiation determines the virtual content of an idea as a problem. Differentiation expresses the actualization of this virtual and the constitution of solution.
Yeah.
Okay.
That sounds good.
But that differentiation then is the actualization.
Yeah.
Is not the mathematical part.
Yeah, it is. All of it is. That's why he says at one point that the whole
differentiation is differentiation. Differentiation is the use of the differential function.
It's they both are, and because he says at one point that the whole mathematical regime implies both of these, right? That's what he's sort of claiming. But within that regime that he's sort of discussing, sort of mathematical model, there is a difference between the differentiation of the ideal elements. That is like it's the distribution of singularities, the relation of the ideas themselves.
This is one of those sentences. This is one of those sentences I remember from my time reading DNR, and that sticks with me because it's the thing for me that I've always understood these two parts as, and because they're ultimately, and I'm just going to say differentiation. I'm going to pronounce it that way while we're doing this. is the second part of difference. And it is necessary to form the complex notion of, doesn't show me which one it is, which I love, of differentiation. I need not be a fucking have. Yeah.
Don't borrow it. Don't borrow it to larvae if you get it. I'm just throwing shade on larvae.
Feel free to. Difference, repetition. Get a fucking copy bot.
It's like $20. It's not even that expensive.
That's where you're wrong, because in America we don't have French speakers, so everything is a fucking nightmare.
I mean, Quebec.
It's $38 on.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Let me see if I can find a copy.
Maybe you get notes inside of some actual like genius delusion.
That would be cool.
Always a hope, isn't it?
That would be lovely. Good Lord. $50 used? Fuck. How is it more expensive? It's supposed to be because it's everything's shipped from overseas. $20 shipping from France.
I mean, then you have the
nice book. I don't even care. Unbelievable.
It's not that good of a quality. Like I expected French people to do better books.
I know North America has French speakers. I'm more speaking from the jokey, holy shit, I have to buy all my French copies overseas and have them shipped here, and I get fucked on shipping every single time, and it's a nightmare. That's more what my I actually looked into opening a bookstore here that could just buy like Minuet editions and others, like wholesale, and then just have like, media shipping in the US in order to do that. Because if you can get them all at once, it's actually pretty cheap to do all that, but it's just a nightmare. So it's like new, it's $35 on Amazon, $4 delivery. $40, get it delivered. I need the French and awful.
Would it be cheaper if I send it to you? I'll just like buy it and like it's gonna arrive
probably
at the
not.
same time.
Probably would be around $20 to ship it to me.
That sucks.
It does suck. Like, I'm not gonna disagree with that comment at all. But I can get the Chinese edition for $55. The Japanese version's $22. That makes less sense. This Japanese edition, that much cheaper. What the fuck is going on? There's I'm lucky. We have a semi-French language bookstore called, here in Portland. Highly recommend it. If you're ever in Portland, everyone smiles at the name of it because it's the best bookstore name ever. Mother Foucault's. And they specialized in used French and foreign theory and poetry. That's their thing. That's what they do. So like, last time I was in there, they had like a second edition Marx German fucking that. Like, it's crazy stuff that they get. I've gotten some Baudrillard. I got a bunch of original Bergson, like crazy stuff. An amazing story. And the guys are really, really cool. I got a first edition Klosowski, Nietzsche Les Sur Vichy, which is a hardcover. There were only like 100 made. It was easy shit. So, there are French language around, but I find this frustrating. One sec, I just have to buy my stupid. Because this fucking thing I'm looking at has a missing logo. Why the you have a missing logo in a PDF? I don't know. Wait, what? I don't think I'm not going to get here till the 2 weeks.
God damn. Wait. Maybe Larva's awake. Let's see if she can take a picture for us.
Ah, 2 weeks on shipping is. I'm gonna be a bastard and use Amazon. I expect better. Cancel that order, and I will find it. Whose title is...
Dude, Amazon is winning simply because I don't want to wait for 4 fucking months for a library or like a bookstore.
If I'm gonna
give me a
wait,
book.
I'm happy to wait, but it's like, yeah, it sucks. I mean, they're losing more and more every day. A really fascinating shift that's happened because Amazon, I do have the English. It's true. Of course, I have the English of DNR. I've got a few versions of it too. One's coming from Montreal. That would even overseas people, very good version. I've never seen this. I don't speak assuming Greek. Fucking, that's the coolest cover I've seen in a very long.
Ooh.
And I don't read Greek at all, but it looks like a language that would be really cool. It always has.
Diaphora Kai.
Don't know.
Oh, Larva's here.
Larva,
All right, wait.
need you to take a picture of, I don't know, some page. Not going to help at all. Are you writing for me, Eldoran, or do I need to? Okay.
I am. I'm trying to get her into chat because it's easier to tell her than to explain. Oh, she's here. Hey, can you get my borrowed copy of Difference in Repetition? And open the page. What's the page, Brooks?
I don't know.
What's the page? Oh, shit, it doesn't have pages. Okay, open the last couple of pages of chapter 4. You following so far? No, the last page of chapter 4, I think, and take a picture of it for us.
Actually, that would work. Then we'd know what's missing.
I don't know where's your mic. We don't need you to speak. We need you to picture.
We need photos. More clicky.
None of you, of the book.
No. We need photos, clicky of the book. Clicky, just. I mean, you're presuming you're a woman?
Yes.
I mean, that's.
See, I like them.
That's.
I like them big and small and fat. So I'm
you can find.
reflecting.
I can speak. Wait. So
Yeah.
you are asking for the thing you posted in the chat part?
Yes. If we
Yeah,
can find
just
that,
like
that would be lovely.
Open the last
Can you
page of
repeat
chapter
last
4.
page.
Chapter 4. Yeah. And
That's
take a
what you
picture
get
of
for
it.
giving me the book, you know.
I've been complaining here for at least 4 times about how I borrowed you that book.
I'm sorry. Yes.
It's okay. I might get it back eventually.
I planned on giving it back to you. Actually. So.
We believe you.
Yeah, I don't know if I would like literally do it, but I was thinking about it. Wait, I'm looking for the last page. Oh my god. No, what's the Jesus?
That's okay. Everyone's
This
just
is not
watching.
recorded.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Oh
this
yeah.
is
We're
not
live on
recorded.
YouTube.
You're not, right?
We are.
We are.
Yes?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my god! Okay, well, okay.
That's fine.
I'm on the last page of this. I cannot find this quote.
Just the last page of that section is fine. Either way. So it's, if you can't see in the screenshot I took, for some ungodly reason, the PDF I have, we're trying to figure out which he's using, differentiation or differentiation, and it, of all the letters over and over, it just removes that. And I want it, but of all the things, it's literally the only thing we cared about to download this French PDF. And it's like, so please help us. You just tell me what the letter is that is missing. That would be lovely.
I'm having a really hard time finding the exact.
Don't find the quote.
Not the exact.
Take,
Here,
take the whole
I'll share.
picture of the
I'll share
whole-
with you. I'll share with you where we were at specifically, and you can find that one. Give me 2 seconds.
You just want me to take a picture of last page or of chapter
Yeah.
4?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, just say that.
That's perfectly fine.
And then if that quote is not on that page, stay a bit longer. Maybe you take second to last, but we'll see.
Okay.
I don't know how it's formatted in the actual book.
It would be there again. Same exact thing, stupid, insane. Hey, I'm amazed. It's like of all the things to care about.
Oh, I find it. It's not on this page. It's on the other. I think. Oh,
No,
or maybe it's
nope,
not.
nope,
Well,
nope.
anyways, check the thing.
That's it.
Okay.
Nice, thank you. Oh yeah,
Wonderful.
That's it.
you see, there is it, Brooks. First sentence of the smaller paragraph. He uses T and C as differential elements. What? That's even weirder. Do you see?
One sec. I'm
see
trying
what-
to catch up to. What the fuck?
Oh, well, that's
That's
well,
so weird.
No wonder it's
but-
missing.
but there's
And
a
Jesus
point in
Christ,
that.
how does that not get carried through a translation? That should be carried through.
Yes, but then the next sentence, this is correct. He uses T, which I said is incorrect in the scan. I had a premonition that it's incorrect in the scan. He uses T, and then l'actualisation esthétique est. I'm learning Latin, so everything is est. And then
Fine.
differentiation.
I am utterly. So for those on YouTube unable to see, I'm going to pop it in because this is how you make a really
Amazing.
great moment. Is like how it's even more insane than we thought, and also makes a very clean point, I think. Because the sentence as it's read then is very, very fucking different. Like that's a completely different meaning for that sentence with that translation. Jesus Christ. Because that's the sentence I was reading. Oh my God. I just, why do I do this? Why? This is fucking shit. So let's see. Let's get the image in here 1 second. Boom. Feel it. All right. So
I love
for those,
that fucking. I love how he wrote it. It's so unhinged.
he's such a dick. I fucking, but it's actually making more of the point, I think, that he's playing with these terms. That's what we're talking about. That's the whole idea here is he's literally playing. And if you can't see it, it's right here in the upper left. La differentiation. Fucking, what an ass. What an ass. Because this is now the same sentence, but it takes on almost a wholly different, this takes on a completely. That's why the translation's missing it. It ain't the only place he does it then. Because this, with that missing symbol,
it's the only place he does it in the whole book.
It is not going to, I guarantee you it's not.
Okay, I mean,
because it's not
time to fucking research.
Time to find it. We're going to find it now. Because the missing differentiation with the missing thing is.
Oh, I just got the shitty version.
A bunch.
Is it the shitty?
It's a bunch.
How did you find it?
I I searched for differentiation with a space in between that didn't mean either T or C. So it looks like this, and I'm gonna try to. We're gonna find because this is. I'm gonna. Larva, you still here, Steve? Right, Larva's still here.
Yeah.
All right.
In my book, it's only one with like a space in between. Like in the French
Interesting.
copy, that's searchable.
Then I want to
I
know
think-
because it might be that
think
it
it's
might be
the-
this. It's fine. Because I have, for example, and it's a little bit later, and I'm trying to figure out where. But here, I'll share a screenshot so you can. Times it's because it's a few of them. All of those have the missing image symbol in there. The missing image
All right,
symbol.
time to research. Larva, you still here?
Yeah.
All right. Let's see.
How will I find these?
274.
274
261.
is the one we were just reading.
Let's go to 261 and see where it is. I can then look and tell you where it, in
Do
the book it
page
is.
numbers match the book? Or?
No,
Absolutely
sadly.
not.
Sadly, no.
Because it's not even formatted the same way.
No, it's not. It's a fully retext version rather than using the image.
Then it is very ambitious of you guys that I will be able to find that so easily or
Well.
something.
You will.
No, are you actually expecting me to like turn pages like to find this? Okay.
This is the
Oh
other
my
one is
God.
right underneath this phrasing that he uses here. This is Latin. This would be the same in every language, which puts it in page 227 of the English. We have ceaselessly invoked the virtual in doing so, blah, blah, blah. Object may ends rather than on ends. Without being into that thing. Then the next paragraph is he's using it. And in the English translation here, Jesus Christ. Why didn't you mention this to me, people?
What
Come
did
on.
you see?
They have it sort of.
Where?
Page 209 of the English.
PDF or...
I'm going to share it on my screen. Don't worry. I'm about to share my screen. Here we go. Boop. That one? Is it that? Is it? Yep. Right here. And then you see down at the bottom there, I'm just going to actually zoom in. Notion of differentiation, T&C, and his phrasing is, and he actually expands on it. The T and the C here are distinctive feature of, or the phonological relation of difference in person. Okay.
Oh yeah,
wait,
I found that part right now. It's also T and
Over
C
C.
thing. Yeah.
I'm going to change my window so you can read with me, Eldrin, because this is fucking, this is what.
This is scholarship.
Discord
People, if you
crashed.
want to study philosophy, this is what you're going to be doing 99% of the time.
All right, right here, I'm just going to zoom the fuck in. And I'm going to, I have to zoom out from the YouTube so that way they aren't getting completely fucked by a bunch of other texts. Because I want everyone to join us on this hilarious journey. But I'm looking at it's at the bottom of the page. It's right here. Sharing, I'm reading. Here we go. Thus, there is thus another part of the object which is determined by actualization. Mathematicians ask, what is this other part represented by the so-called primitive function? In this sense, integration is by no means the inverse of differentiation, rather forms an original process of differentiation. Did you find this in the French by chance, Larva?
Yes,
Yeah, that's the
yes,
one.
I
I
did.
found it out.
And
Is it the T and C in the same places?
yes, they are in the they're in the cursive. Yes,
All right, and it's the inverse of differentiation, and then it ends with
looks the
differentiation.
same.
All right, because it's a very particular use. In this sense, integration is by no means the inverse of differentiation, but rather forms an original process of differentiation. Whereas differentiation, I'm going to overstate it and sound like a fucking tool, sorry, determines the virtual content of the idea as problem. Differentiation expresses the actualization of this virtual and the constitution of solutions by local integrations. Just reading about this. Somehow we've come around to the text we were literally reading and this rabbit hole paid off. It's fucked up. Differentiation is like the second part of difference. And in order to designate the integrity or the integrality of the object, we require the complex notion of differentiation. That's what it says. Differentiation. I don't know how else to pronounce that. Here's the line. The T and the C here are the distinctive feature or the phonological relation of difference in person. Every object is double without it being, oh my God, this makes so much. Every object is double without it being the case that the two halves resemble one another, one being a virtual image and the other an actual image. They are unequal, odd halves. Differentiation itself already has, one second, I need to expand a thing. Differentiation itself already has two aspects of its own, corresponding to the varieties of relations and to the singular points dependent upon the values of each variety. However, differentiation in turn has two aspects. One concerning the qualities or diverse species which actualize the varieties, the other concerning the number or the distinct parts actualizing the singular points. That's a very clear way to talk about this.
Yeah, better than I did.
That's fantastic. Also, this really helped that he writes it like that. It genuinely helps because it's again, this, to go back to the reason I don't, from the beginning, I felt uneasy about saying that there's like, how different are they? Kind of becomes this really weird sort of almost perversion of the thing because they're kind of the same thing doing different parts of an operation. And that's how he's describing it here, at least how I'm reading it. Tell me if you disagree or you differently. Because as he's talking about it, and it's a little bit above here, and it's where this paragraph starts. It's the paragraph you actually said this is the paragraph we should have read, and I'm glad we made our way back to it. Because we're talking about to go back slightly to the previous paragraph. What is complete is only the ideal part of the object, which participates with other parts of the objects in the idea, but never institutes an integral whole as such. There's a chapter in Anti-Oedipus called The Whole in Its Parts. This is what he's referring to. The thing that is complete is the ideal part of the object, a whole that participates in the other parts of the object and the idea of the object, but never actually constitutes the whole as such. What the complete determination lacks is the whole set of relations belonging to actual existence. An object may be ons, or rather non ons omnimodo determinatum. Not even going to try. Come on, Latin boy. Come on, what you got?
Wait. I was distracted.
You just said I'm learning Latin.
But you think I'm okay. I can't translate it. I'm sorry. My translating is too slow for this to work here. Omni, everything.
It means being, ons, being, and then omnimodo, Determinata means determined. So it's kind of like being, or rather it's not being in any way, omnimodo, any modality, in all the modalities that exist, determinate. So it's saying an object may be being, or rather non-being, in any way determined, not being determined in any way. That makes sense. You can go, Larva. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for joining us and helping, and we will let you talk more often in the future. You have 29 words to use a day now. So
if you
you haven't even gone over your cap.
Of difference in repetitions, you have to pay with pictures of, difference in repetition.
Without being entirely determined or actually existing. So it is not determined in any way. He's making a comment back to Descartes, Spinoza there. That's the Latin. But it's saying that an object may be, or rather may be without being determined in any way, without being determined or actually existing. An object can exist without actually existing. That's the part that's fun. Being is there without actual existence. This is part of the part and parcel of the object. But then we have actualization. There is thus another part of the object that is determined by actualization. What is this other part represented by the so-called primitive function? In this sense, integration is by no means the inverse of differentiation or other forms an original process of differentiation. Differentiation determines virtual content of the idea as problem. This is thinking about the issue of determining the weather. Differentiation determines the virtual content of the idea as problem. Where are the singularities, the locations of them, and things like that. Differentiation expresses the actualization of that virtual and the constitution of solutions thereby. This is it's a double action that's happening inside of differentiation. It's why he does that play with the T and the C. Am I wrong on this? This seems like I'm grasping a thing.
Yes, you are. But it's still important to keep them separate.
No, it is, because one is the process of the differentiation, the placement of the objects and that setup that sort of does it, the singularities inside of that. And the other is the whole of the parts that is happening, that is saying that this is the differentiated element, the weather as a thing that then constitutes solutions and other things that come from that.
Yeah. Or like in the calculus, like you can, like he's talking about the differentiation with a t, like of a differential equation itself that doesn't have to be integrated, right? You don't have to go all the way. You can understand. You can sort of understand these mathematical relations, and that's where also an axiom comes in, because axiom helps you sort of determine. So I'm sort of spitballing a bit on this because it's a really short part he does here. He does mention axioms. Axiom and set theory is a really smart part that helps determine a part of the idea itself, or like relate ideas themselves in a way without determining them completely.
So I'm just going to read a little bit because his description of species and how he talks about that and the organization of them, because again, he's taking this straight from Bergson, who also plays with this very same thing, and he's using that example. Let's just go with it and read it, and then we're going to be done for the day after describing this and going. Species are differentiated only insofar as each has parts which are themselves differentiated. Differentiation is always simultaneously differentiation of species and parts, of qualities and extensities, determination of qualities or determination of species, but also partition or organization. How then do these two aspects of differentiation connect with the two preceding aspects of differentiation? How do the two dissimilar halves of an object fit together? Qualities and species incarnate the varieties of actual relation. Organic parts incarnate the corresponding singularities. However, the precision with which they fit together is better seen from two complementary points of view. On the one hand, complete determination carries out the differentiation of singularities, but it bears only upon their existence and their distribution. The nature of these singular points is specified only by the form of the neighboring integral curves. In other words, by virtue of the actual or differentiated species and spaces. On the other hand, the essential aspects of sufficient reason, determinability, reciprocal determination, complete determination, find their systematic unity in progressive determination. In effect, the reciprocity of determination does not signify a regression, nor a marking time, but a veritable progression in which the reciprocal terms must be secured step by step and the relations themselves established between them. The completeness of the determination also implies a progressivity of adjunct fields. I'm going from A to B and then B to A. We do not arrive back at the point of departure as in a bare repetition. Rather, the repetition between A and B and A is the progressive tour or description of the whole problematic field. Jesus Christ. Okay. I actually think I might be finally understanding this fucking book. This has been a really fun couple hours. This has been a while. There's a lot of things coming together for me,
Chapter 4
Eldrain.
reading when?
I don't know. Soon? I don't know. I've got
Yeah,
this
definitely.
to finish off. I'm still finishing the Axiomatic. But yeah, let's just fucking pick a day. Let's do fucking Thursdays. I don't give a shit.
Oh, no.
Um,
I'm in not in Austria. Let's do
But
next week sometime.
That's fine. This line here is the double play of these things that are happening. Because, and again, this is the whole point of this book is like in this sentence kind of. But in going from A to B and B to A, these are the 2 points. There's the field, there's the placement, there's the direction, there's the velocities, all the stuff that's being laid out there. This is it. But we don't end up back at the point of departure purely. It's not just simply a point of departure. It's not, oh, we're back there. It's, we arrived back there from this other place. The repetition between A and B is the progressive tour or description of the whole field. This is the process that's actually always happening. We can talk about, and we do often talk about, singular points. We went from point A to point B, and then B to A. And that thing of the field, we go, okay, so it's points A and B are the field. That's it. Set up. And Deleuze is like, no. There's a lot of things happening here. When we talk about the movement from A to B and B to A, this, we'll call it a situation, this setup, this field that's happening, has a couple of really interesting singularities. And we can differentiate them, or T-ate them. We differentiate them. And we talk about A and B and the drive from A to B and the drive from B to A. We talk about the vectors. We can actually relate all these things to external things. The field itself sort of stays the same. In order to talk about the difference between the differentiation, we're now talking about a completely different beast. We're about the whole of the trip to A to B or B to A, or what A is, or the singular sort of separation of that. This play that's happening, the multiplicity of it, we are conditioning through this double action of differentiation and then differentiation from another whole, which creates sort of the problematic. Until we axiomatize and we say, oh, it's only these points and you went to point A, you've been to point B, and we are done at that point, which collapses basically all potential inside of it. That's how I read this. Probably said things a little bit more complex, but this feels like I'm in the right direction. Eldaron? No. Okay, no.
Sorry,
Fair enough.
I was muted. Yeah, you're correct. Just
Okay.
like I wouldn't jump so quickly to the axiomatic because it has a specific purpose here. Not
Right.
because you're wrong, just because I don't remember what the fuck it does.
Well, so
It's a complicated chapter.
the axiomatic.
You have to understand
This is the creation of the problematic, and the problematic is how things come about. Like almost always, there is no like people don't create an axiomatic first and then figure out where it goes. They solve a bunch of problems, and then they get to a point where the thing is sort of made to the point where we know all of the different, or we think we know. We claim we know all of the actual, all of the little points, and then it's done. We have point A, we have point B. Are you at point A or B? Like, well, I'm traveling to B. That thing that's happening, the becoming of it is gone. It's been collapsed. I'm almost to B. You're 2 miles between them. You're 26%. Whatever it is, the axiom that's created The axiomatizing of it is creating you as a position within an already determined set, not a determinable set. The problematic is the determinable. So the move that's happening, and the move Deleuze talks about with the axiomatic, is that the axiomatic comes in and just basically lays on top of everything and basically says these are all the determined. Everything is determined. Places all of these points and says their relations and puts it all in place. And Deleuze's work, as Smith is saying, and I really like how he phrases it, but Deleuze's work is to try to find a way of building out the problematic into an idea instead of the way that the problematic sort of builds into the axiomatic over time, theorematic. I really find that fascinating. This is going to be interesting.
Yeah, I'm just to state this because I
know I'm overstating a little bit and I'm trying to relate it back. We're going to get back into Smith's paper probably tomorrow night. So when you wake up, annoy me and we'll jump back in and we'll continue in the paper itself, because now I think I have a better grasp here of how difference operates that I didn't before, because I don't know why I didn't remember that he did the T over T thing. That's so fat. That's fuck. It's in a bunch of places, by the way. Like
I've just, while you were talking as well, I was looking through. I remember it from that place, and
I remember.
It's
in a bunch. It's actually an important thing, which is like, what the fuck?
Yeah, I think it's just because the German one doesn't do it like Deleuze did, with like one above the other. They do it with like the normal slash. But so it's not as
It'll be interesting.
noticeable. Yeah, but it's good. I'm happy I came to this.
Thank you for joining us, and thank all of you guys for joining us. Be streaming a little bit later this week. Elderand also will be streaming at some point DNR in the next
week, Monday, I think.
Brilliant. And keep an eye out. We're doing a lot more stuff. This was great. Thank all of you for joining. This was very good shit. I think this was.
It's awesome. I love DNR. It's such a good book.
It's fun. It's fun together. This is good shit. Thank you for joining, Drew, and thank you for picking at it. So that's the good stuff. Always. Thank all of you.